Hello, everybody. It's Elizabeth Suarez, and I welcome you to my business chat session. Every week, I try to provide my audience with some relevant and important information that can help you in your career. In today's episode, I am focusing on the reliance we have placed on video conferencing technologies. 2020 has become the year where instead of asking how many of us use Zoom, the question is how many hours a day we spend on Zoom. For me, it's 5 to 6 hours a day. I don't know about you, but that is insane to say I am fatigued, exhausted to be in front of a Zoom camera for 6 hours a day is an understatement. So yes, I am that individual that if you send me a Zoom happy hour invite or an invite for a Zoom hangout session, I'm not going to accept it. Why? Because I yearn for one-on-one connection with other individuals. So you're better off giving me a call and getting on the phone. Now, I feel our reliance on Zoom and the other video conferencing technologies for our work, education, simply socializing has placed a huge burden on how we conduct ourselves. During the past 6 months since the pandemic started, I have noticed an increase in people's disengagement and rudeness on video platforms. Some of this rudeness has translated into people not turning on their video camera when even the leader of the call is asking for people to please keep their video on. Another example is making rude statements in the chat box. Another one is not participating in polls, or one that it is my biggest pet peeve is that you're set up to be in breakout rooms and the breakout rooms comes, they bail. And they then come back when it's the general session. And the list can go on. Now, these types of behaviors are just the tip of the iceberg. I'm actually more concerned about the verbal disrespect, rudeness, and experience that I had in a recent Zoom call. Full disclosure, I was just a participant. I was not leading the call. But this is what happened. We were going throughout the conference, in the middle of the conference, and all of a sudden, a couple of people started placing rude comments in the chat box. From there, I gathered the attention of other participants, and then they started answering to that rudeness. Anyway, long story short, the people that started the rude chat box discussion actually unmuted themselves, started making noises, and worse yet, the leader of the meeting decided to ignore all these noises and ignore all this disturbance. Needless to say, when the meeting was done, most of us felt that it was actually a waste of our time. So how can we actually control or better manage this type of behavior? I believe there are 3 ways that we can do it, and I want to share it today with you. I firmly believe, number 1, that we need to prepare and communicate the engagement guidelines. And I believe that this communicating and creating the engagement guidelines need to follow some rules. Number 1, the rule is that the leader is the one that places the guidelines, and he or she is the one that has the capability of enforce it. Some of the guidelines is mainly video always on, anytime except for breaks that you can turn off your video. Everybody is muted at all times. It's only the leader that actually can unmute you. Chat is to be used solely for the discussion of the presentation. If somebody diverts from that, that person will be asked directly to please stop. And if they continue, they will be asked to leave the meeting. Those are great guidelines, and there could be other guidelines. I suggest, number 2, that you take those guidelines and you formalize them by including them in the agenda, and you send them ahead of time in the agenda, in the email, stating these are the guidelines. Do you have any questions, or do you want to add any to them? Now, the day of your meeting, when the meeting starts, the other thing I ask you to do is actually review the guidelines and read them out loud. And at the end, say, can everybody show me thumbs up if you're in agreement, or if there's anything that I should be adding. By doing that, all of a sudden, you can hold everybody involved accountable. And last but not least is having a co-host. This is so important, especially when you have meetings of 10 or more people. Having so many people in the Zoom call is very difficult for you as the leader to actually watch what they're doing. You need this co-host that can actually communicate directly one-on-one with each participant. Make sure that they have their video camera on. Make sure if they have any questions, they can communicate it with the co-host. The co-host and then can communicate to you, and you can address any issues or questions they have. I would recommend using somebody that you know from your team. I would recommend using maybe an administrator, even a volunteer, a friend. I will even recommend, if you want to know how to really perfect it, volunteer yourself for the next large meeting that you would say, I will be the co-host, so you can see what participants are going through and what feedback you are receiving. I hope you found these 3 tips useful and valuable. I would like to connect and continue the conversation. I encourage you to subscribe to my YouTube channel, Speaker Elizabeth Suarez, where every week I will be providing some effective tips for your profession and your business. However, you feel free to contact me directly at negotiationunleashed.com. I will see you next time. Thank you for your time. Nos vemos.